Seo In-guk, one must first analyze the marginalization phase not as a period of failure, but as a systemic filtering process. The rejection he faced from agencies like JYP Entertainment was not a verdict on his potential, but a failure of the industry's scouting algorithms. The K-pop industrial complex of the late 2000s was designed to manufacture compliance. It favored malleability and a specific visual homogeneity. Seo, with his sharp, fox-like features and a vocal timbre that carried the weight of lived experience, did not fit the assembly line. The agency's rejection was a structural denial, a byproduct of a system that could not compute a lead vocalist who did not adhere to the visual role hierarchy. This sidelining was crucial. It forced Seo away from the idol training system, which often flattens individuality into uniformity, and necessitated that he develop his artistry in the raw, unpolished arena of reality television. Had he been accepted into a major label's trainee program, he likely would have been sanitized, his edge smoothed down to fit a group dynamic. The industry's rejection was, in retrospect, the most strategic asset of his early career. It preserved his uniqueness by denying him entry into the machine that would have broken him. The physical and mental pressure Seo In-guk endured during this era is often framed as a tragedy, but through an analytical lens, it served as a crucible that qualified him for the longevity he now enjoys. The development of bulimia and the subsequent damage to his vocal cords were devastating consequences of an industry imposing dangerous beauty standards. Yet this trauma forged a specific kind of artistic depth that cannot be taught. When he lost his voice due to the corrosive effects of forced vomiting, he was forced to rebuild his instrument from the ground up. This was a pivotal moment of technical reconstruction. The voice that emerged was not the pristine, manufactured tone preferred by agencies, but a textured, emotive instrument capable of conveying visceral pain. The industry's demand for thinness backfired. By trying to force him into a mold, they inadvertently created a vocalist with a unique resonance, huskier, more wounded, and infinitely more compelling. The years of rejection and the battle with his own body image did not break him. They decomposed his innocence and reconstructed him as an artist capable of accessing darker, more complex emotional registers, a credential that would later define his acting career. When Seo In-guk won Superstar K in 2009, it was not a launchpad, but a data point proving a market disconnect. The victory, followed by continued scrutiny over his appearance, highlighted the friction between public taste and industry gatekeeping. The public voted for him, validating his talent, yet the industry's comment sections remained fixated on his failure to adhere to aesthetic norms. This discrepancy revealed a crack in the system's foundation. Seo's transition to acting was a strategic maneuver to bypass the visual ceiling imposed on singers. However, this transition brought a new set of constraints: the deep-seated prejudice against acting idols. The industry operates on a caste system where singers are often viewed as interlopers in the dramatic arts. Seo In-guk was marginalized twice over, first for his looks, then for his pedigree. Yet this constraint functioned as a filter. It meant he could not rely on the easy capital of fandom alone. He had to outperform, outprepare, and outlast his peers who had been handed roles based on popularity rather than ability. This period of skepticism forced him to approach acting with a technical discipline that many native actors lack, treating each role not as an extension of his celebrity, but as a problem to be solved through craft. The turning point, Reply 1997, was not a lucky break, but the logical intersection of preparation and a shifting cultural tide. The role of Yoon Yoon-jae required a specific type of masculinity that was waning in Korean media: the loyal, rough-edged, quietly intense romantic lead. The industry's obsession with delicate, pretty male leads had created a vacuum for authentic, gritty masculinity. Seo In-guk did not just fill this vacuum, he weaponized the very features he was criticized for. The fox eyes that casting directors once deemed unpleasant became his greatest asset, allowing him to project a gaze that was simultaneously protective and dangerous. The success of Reply 1997 was a confirmation that the market was starving for realism. Seo's performance worked because he didn't try to mask his origins or his struggle. He used the residual pain of his marginalization to fuel a character that felt lived in. This was the moment the system could no longer contain him. He proved that the acting idol stigma was a myth perpetuated by casting directors who failed to understand that a singer who has survived public humiliation possesses a dramatic range that exceeds that of actors who have never faced the crucible of the live stage. Following this breakthrough, Seo In-guk employed a strategy of patient versatility that stands in stark contrast to the rapid-fire content consumption model of his peers. He did not rush to capitalize on his fame with repetitive romantic comedies. Instead, he exhibited strategic patience, selecting roles that chipped away at the good guy image. Projects Projects like Master's Son and The Smile Has Left Your Eyes were not merely acting jobs, they were deliberate acts of brand expansion. In The Smile Has Left Your Eyes, he played a character defined by ambiguity and internal scarring, a role that required him to dismantle the charming persona he had built. This was a risk. The industry prefers typecasting for safety, but Seo understood that true authority comes from the inability to be easily categorized. By oscillating between romance, thriller, and eventually action in Project Wolf Hunting, he denied the industry the power to define him. This resistance to categorization is what elevated him from a popular actor to a necessary one. He was building a portfolio that argued his value was not in his face but in his ability to navigate the human psyche, a talent far more durable than visual trends. The military service controversy in 2017 stands as the most significant stress test of his career, and his survival of it offers a case study in leverage and public capital. In South Korea, the evasion of military service is a societal sin that typically results in permanent exile. The accusations that Seo had manipulated his medical discharge for osteochondritis dissecans could have ended his trajectory entirely. However, the inevitability of his career is proven by his return. A lesser artist, one whose career was built on hype and superficial fandom, would have crumbled under the weight of such a national backlash. Seo In-guk, however, possessed a reserve of artistic credibility that functioned as a shield. The public's forgiveness, eventual though it was, came not from a place of charity, but from a recognition of irreplaceable competence. The industry needed him more than it needed to enforce a moral standard that had been applied inconsistently elsewhere. His return to the screen, specifically with Doom at Your Service, was not a plea for acceptance but a resumption of duty. The controversy, rather than defining him, served to deepen the complexity of his public persona. He was no longer just the hardworking underdog, but a figure who had traversed the darkest corners of public scrutiny and emerged with his authority intact. In his global breakout role as Myeol Mang in Doom at Your Service, Seo In-guk confirmed what his early years suggested. He was built for the international market. The domestic Korean beauty standard had historically marginalized him, but the global audience, less interested in specific Korean facial ratios and more engaged with emotional resonance and atmospheric acting, embraced him immediately. His portrayal of a deity who brings destruction was the culmination of years of refining his craft, utilizing his unique gaze, his textured voice, and his ability to convey isolation. It was here that the man rejected for his looks became a global symbol of seductive melancholy. The success of the drama internationally served as a final vindication. The very features that were once deemed unpleasant were now the specific product features driving global consumption. The industry's initial gatekeeping had delayed his rise, but it had also crafted an artist who possessed a distinct identity in a sea of homogenized global pop exports.